Were you just closing a sale like 3 minutes before we got on this call?
Did. Yeah.
That's beast. So $41,000 issue paid in 5 weeks. Did you know that you even did that?
When the numbers came out last week, I always look at my numbers.
Yeah, that's huge. All right. So I'm obviously a very big fan of you. You've been crushing it. I'm very proud of you. But for anybody who doesn't get on live dials and hear you sell every single day and doesn't know who you are, can you talk about your background, how you found FFL, how long you've been here, what the story was, what's your experience thus far?
For sure. Yeah, I got kind of a long story, so I'll try to condense it up. But so what I was doing before this, I was a financial consultant, help people invest their money. And honestly, as far as like a 9 to 5 goes, like it was pretty close to my dream job. So basically what it's pretty random how I got into this business, but I was driving from my brother's and I was listening to an audiobook and just like a random stat came out that like it said, I don't know what the exact number was, like 80 to 90% of the people are born and you die in the same state. You never move out of your state. So I got to thinking, I was single at the time. I was no kids, no wife. And literally from 10 minutes ago, that thought never crossed my mind. 10 minutes later, I was just like, well, shit, I guess I'm moving. And then I decided to pick up and go to North Carolina. And before I did that, I wanted to do some traveling. So what I did is I had a friend that I knew from a long time ago, and I never haven't talked to him in probably 8 years or so, but I always followed him on Instagram. And he was just always posting like travel. He was always traveling around the world, posting cool stuff. So I just kept following him. Met up with him in Peru, and I just asked him, I was like, dude, how you like always traveling? How you always doing this stuff? Like, what do you do for work? And he's like, hey man, I sell insurance, FFL. Here's the deal. And it just, I mean, right time, right place, right? Like I was looking for something. So it just kind of fell into my lap. So basically before I went on a trip, I took my test. When I got back, I wanted to, hit the ground running right away. So did 4 months Central America, came back, got my stuff, moved to North Carolina. I did this for like last year over the summer, did like part-time, kind of half-assed it like 2 to 3 months. And then I took off again 5 months through Europe, Africa, came back in January of this year and been doing it full-time since then.
So you got recruited in Peru.
I did. Yeah.
Such an Andy thing to say, such an Andy thing to happen. Okay, perfect. So financial, you were doing financial stuff before. Was that insurance or not? You didn't have any insurance sales experience.
No, I honestly knew nothing about insurance. Like there is some aspects of sales involved into it, but as far as insurance goes, no, I was completely new to insurance coming in.
Got it. So when your friend told you about that, did you think that like that was real, or did you like were you skeptical about it because you came from a financial background, which is something we hear a lot?
Truthfully, no. I'm like the easiest sales. Like you can sell anything to me. Like someone knocks on my door and sells me like whatever it is, I'm gonna buy from them. Honestly, I just respect the grind. But when he told me about it, like I saw what other people were doing. It made sense to me. Like I always had like a business entrepreneurship kind of like mindset. Like eventually, I knew I was gonna work for myself. So when he said it to me, like it did make sense.
That's huge. You're just like, I'll just buy anything. You like rent your house and they're like, do you want to buy solar? And you're like, absolutely. And they're like, you don't even own this place. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I
If
can,
I
I can, I can imagine you doing that. So I mean, obviously you have so much potential that I'm finally so excited that you're starting to come into it, because I've been wanting to like shake your head for like a month, or like for the last like 10 months, like Andy, you could do so much more, but you've just been like kind of chilling. So talk about what is the difference, right? Like before you were cool doing 8, 10 grand a month. Now all of a sudden you're crushing it. Where did that come from? Or like, what is that?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I can like narrow it down. Like, I just didn't wake up one morning and like something hit me, nothing like that. I honestly think it's just like a product of being consistent every day, every week, and just like doing what you're supposed to be doing. So like when you start in this business, like you're gonna suck, that's natural. And then 3 months from now, you're a little bit better. 6 months from now, you're a little bit better. And then I think the best way to describe this, I think I could be wrong, but Brian Mendenhall, I got on this call one time, and he described this business like one of those like water spout hose things where you're like pumping and like barely no water's coming out, and then all of a sudden after a while it just like goes crazy. I think that's like a pretty good analogy of how this business works. Like sometimes things just like click for you after a while, you get that momentum building and it just kind of goes off from there. I will say a couple of things here. So one, I think one of my bigger strengths, like I said, is being consistent. Like I'm working Monday through Friday every day. So I think that, when you're doing that, you're getting better as time goes on. But also, I was talking to Vincent today. He wanted me to bring this up. Me, him, and Diego had a talk Saturday, and honestly, I kind of thought everyone was doing this, but I think a tip, if you guys aren't already doing this, is you need to keep track of your numbers. So like I have a spreadsheet or like a Google Excel sheet that every single dollar I spend on this lead vendor, how many appointments I book, how many one call closes, how many no shows, how much IP I'm written from it. And then when I did that for the first 4 or 5 months. I mean, I'm still doing it, but for the first 4 and 5 months, I look back and say, okay, I'm being this profitable with this lead vendor, this profitable with this lead vendor, and then you go back and make adjustments, right? So what I was doing here in the last 30 days, a change I made is what I used to be doing is I would call all my leads once time through, and then I'd call them again, and then I'd buy new leads. Well, what I found out is when I'd call them once time through, I'd keep track of how much money I was making, how much issue paid I was writing. And then the second time I was keeping track. First time I was doing it, I was, I'd average like 8 to 10x on that first dial through. And then the second dial through, I was like 2x. So, and I was spending the same amount of time my first time through, same amount of time my second time through. So to me, it just didn't make sense to spend the same amount of time. So I'm not saying do that for everyone, but that was just an adjustment I made here in the last 30 days is I would just dial them once through, buy new leads, dial them once through, and it made a lot more profitable sense for me.
Yeah, that's huge. Andy, what do you think as like a new agent? Like let's back up like a year ago and as you're getting this thing before it started compounding, what do you think is a struggle that you had to like overcome?
You're saying when I like first started?
Yeah, or just like what's the thing about the business that made you the most uncomfortable that you had to like now you've gotten over?
Um, I think what people and myself included, what people struggle with, like when you first, for the majority of us, when we first get into this, like it's probably our first time being a business owner. And a lot of people bring their 9 to 5 mindset into this, and like they have a 9 to 5 worth ethic, they're what they're doing every day. And I think that's where people struggle. Like you are a business owner now. So getting up, when your alarm goes off, you get out of bed, you go to work. When you don't want to dial, like it's really easy when your friend hits you up and wants to go golf at 12 o'clock on a Friday to say yes, but to have that discipline to, say, hey, no, man, I got to work. I got business I got to do. So like having that discipline to realize like, hey, you are working on your own now. No one's going to tell you what to do. No one's going to tell you when to go to work. Like it's up to you to kind of grind for yourself. So I think that was a struggle when I first started is just kind of taking that 9 to 5 mindset and kind of getting it out the window and realizing like you are a business owner. There's sacrifices that have to be made if you really want this thing to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Andy, and there are still things like you get to do that's fun for your life, right? Like last week I was talking to you and you're like, hey, I'm going to like a basketball game tonight, right? Or like I'm out of town, I'm going to travel. And a lot of times people mix that up. It's like they go too far one way, right? Like all of a sudden you see someone that's like always traveling, always hanging out, always going on vacations. And you're like, dude, when do you work, right? Or it's the opposite of like, hey, I'm grind. What's your like your activity goals for your like, hey, if I hit these numbers, then I'm allowed to go do these things? Or do you have a system like that in place?
I wouldn't say it's like a certain number per se. I would say like if you're not where you want to be, if you're doing 5, 10 families a month, and obviously that's not the goal. I mean, there shouldn't be reasons why you're taking Friday off to, go on a trip or go to a football game, whatever the case may be. For me, it's not like a certain number, but I'm pretty consistent. Like Monday through Friday, I'm 9 to 9. Saturdays are my days off. That's when I'm go social, go hang out with friends, go to a football game, whatever. Sunday, I watch NFL all day, but then I'm back to work on Monday. So like Monday through Friday, I'm grinding. The weekends, usually I kind of take off and hang out with some people
Yeah. And you're on live dials every day, literally.
every day.
Why do you do that?
One, it keeps me kind of like if for one, I live by myself. So like if I'm not on live dials, it's just like it's kind of boring. Like you're working by yourself, no one's around, no one's going to tell you, it's kind of boring. But if you're on live dials, one, you're listening from everyone. So, when Nicole or Riyadh are unmuting, you're hearing what they're doing. You obviously want to learn from people that have the success that you want to have. And then also when you're unmuting yourself, I mean, if you're working by yourself in your own little office, how are you going to get better if no one's coaching you, right? So like if you're not on live dials, you're not going to get better just working by yourself in your own little office.
Yeah. And you can help other people when you're on there.
Yep, exactly.
That's huge. All right. I want to talk to you about some training stuff because I think Andy is sometimes in the business, it can get really easy to, like you said, not have personal accountability, right? Like you're like, I had to discipline myself, not have that 9 to 7, like I had to realize that I work for myself. You had an upline who you met in you, I mean, you didn't meet him in Peru, but you saw him in Peru, and that's when you got recruited, right? And that person he's still out traveling the world, which is fantastic, right? So we didn't have, when you got started, as much as we have an Inspire group right now and all the great trainings, we didn't have that even when you got started. So a lot of this stuff you kind of had to go figure it on your own, right? Like what are some of the resources that you plugged into, and how did you not use that excuse of like, well, no one trained me, or no one taught me, or this person's not available, and you just continue to keep going?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up. So when I did that 2.5 month little stint, the person that recruited me, he was living in Thailand, which is like a 12-hour time difference. And that was the only person I knew in the business. Like I didn't know a single other person in the business. So he was unreachable. So literally for like first 2.5 months, I didn't know anything. And it was just me and the homie, the genie, just going to work. Like that was the only resource I had. Like, so when people make excuse of, their upline or whatever, like I kind of find it a little bit comical. Because I mean, like if you want to make this work, you can make it work. Like you just got to make a committed decision. Like no matter what happens, no matter what gets thrown at me, like people have made this work in worse situations than I have. So if you want to make it work, you can make it work. Doesn't matter about the training, doesn't matter about your upline. But I mean, the difference between now, when I first started, between now, I mean, it's 100% difference. Like I'll just shout you out, Marissa. I've never had a leader like you, Marissa, who always available anytime I've needed a call, anytime I've needed a text. You've always responded. So any person that's on here that isn't utilizing that or is complaining about your upline, I know that's BS because you have Marissa on your team. So there should be no excuse of why you cannot succeed in this business.
And I think too, Andy, is like it's also like a matter of being self-sufficient, right? Like we have so many resources, guys. You have the FFL YouTube, you have live dials, you have, even if Andy and I both fell off the face of the earth tomorrow and like we never came back again, wherever the heck we went, right? Like you have so many resources that to have the excuse of like, I couldn't figure it out, or I didn't know where to go, or I didn't know what the training was, like it's almost impossible, right?
Right. I
And
mean, yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there's countless hours and hours of videos on YouTube, Slack, literally everywhere you can get training videos. And also, like, I've never reached out to someone and been denied. Like, no one's ever hit me back like, hey, man, leave me alone. Like, anybody can reach out, even if it's not on our team. Like, you can search a random name on Instagram, slide in their DMs, ask them a question. They're going to respond to you. Like, I've done it before. So, like, there's countless help that they can reach out to.
yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of too is like some of that is like we have so many resources. We have the training, which is great. We have live dials. Andy, how much did you close today?
Let me do the math.
Let me just do the math because it's a lot.
A little under $3,000.
Okay, little under $3,000, right? So anybody at any point today could have gone on live dials and heard you close
Right.
at any point, right? So it's like I always love that too, because someone told me this, because I used to try to like, just do so much for people, which I still love to do that, and I'm still always here. But someone's like, you know what, you can't say the right thing to the wrong person, and you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. Like the reality is, guys, even though we do these awesome training calls and Andy's a complete freaking beast and like you can learn his word tracks and things like that, the reality is like, if you want to, you will. Like no matter what your circumstance in the business is like, if you want to go find the answers, you'll go find the answers. And if you don't, you don't. Like, to be honest, Andy was on my team for a while, which we had the whole upline issue. We couldn't connect, right? So it was like, I didn't even know who this guy was. So I wasn't helping him at the very beginning, but guess what? Andy was still selling, right? Until we got connected. And then it was like, oh, hey, we can help each other with these things. But the reality is I didn't really do anything. No matter what I did, Andy, you were going to go figure it out no matter what, because you're the right person, right? You had your own goals, your own schedule, your own, hey, this is what I'm going to do every single day.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes me think of something. So I remember when Grady got on this call, it was a long time ago. It was like my first or second month in this business, and he actually gave the same talk at convention. His topic was like 5 tips for new agents, and I couldn't even tell you what 4 of them were, but one that always stuck out, like I still think about it, is that like he said that your problems are not unique to you. So like every single person here has the same exact problems. Every single person gets no-showed. Every single person gets chargebacks. Every single person gets told to F off from time to time. So if person A is writing, $5,000 a month, person B is writing 100, they both have the same exact clients, same exact leads, same exact business structure, same exact problem. So, I mean, the only difference is of whether that person succeeded or not is because they're overcoming that. They're realizing that's part of the business and they're just making it work. They made a committed decision. Like, no matter what, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna get it.
I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna get it. I like that. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. Your problems are not unique to you. I love that. All right. So Andy, what's your lead flow? Right? Because a lot of times, people have a secret lead source.
So for the last up until about what was locking like 2 weeks ago, something like that. Up until then, for his first 10 months in this business, I was doing final expense. And kind of like what I said, like I used to purchase a bunch of different leads. So, 3 month, 1 month, instant beneficiary. I know they're not called that anymore, but Speakeasy, Premier, whatever. And then I'd go back and I'd realize like, this is a lot more profitable for me. So I'd cut those out. So as far as final expense goes, I was telesales. I found Speakeasy was the most successful for me. So that's always what I used. Up until about 2 weeks ago, whenever the lock-in was, I recently transferred over to mortgage protection and started doing ARIA or area, whatever they're called.
Mhm.
ARIA, I think. And then on average, I would say when I was doing final expense, I spent about 600 to 700 a week. And then now, I mean, I've only bought 2 batches and they were like $500 and $600. So
So you're still spending like I would between $500 and $700 a week.
yeah.
Do you think your close ratio is pretty high?
Yeah, and honestly, the only reason I have no problem spending money on leads. The only reason why I don't spend more is because my leads that I buy are really cheap, and it just I have more people to talk to, and like it just takes me a while to get through them. So like I don't wait to once I'm through the leads, I buy more. So however long it takes, however many presentations I do. So it just kind of depends on the week, but usually on average, I'd say 600 to 800.
Okay, and how much are the speakeasy leads? I remember you
Um,
said.
so when you first start, they're $6 a lead. However, if you if you email them, you can ask them for like a referral code, and every single time they give you 50 free leads, and that drops it down to $4 lead. So those are pretty cheap. And
Okay, so between four, and I know the ARIA marketplace leads are like between 4 and 5. Really, they're not more than 5, right? So
$5.
your leads go anywhere from $3 to $7 maximum. Okay, and you're crushing it. I think a misconception, Andy, in the business is that like, oh, the more expensive leads are better. Why do you only buy $3 to $7 leads and not like $80 leads or $30 leads?
More at bats. I mean, more people you speak to, the better. If I spend $5 a lead compared to $20 a lead, I'm just going to have 4 times the amount of people to talk to. I have no problem getting told no. So more people you reach out, the better success, better chance you're going to have that success. Yeah, that's just always been my set. And kind of like what we always talk about, like a lead is a lead. So I mean, if they're still in the system, they haven't been closed on. So whether it's 3 months, a month, a year, like they haven't been closed on, so they still need the life insurance.
Got it. Did you have it to do anything with leads at your old career or no? Okay, so when you came in, and I know you said like you would pretty much just do anything, was buying on leads uncomfortable, or did you ever go through a phase where you were like, this lead is better than that lead, or this lead sucks, or this one's going to give me more objections? Did you ever go through that phase, or were you always pretty much like, and it is what it is?
All right. So if I kind of figured this topic would come up, and I don't want to sound too aggressive, but like when people complain about buying leads is honestly crazy to me. Like I understand we talk about this every single week and because it's important, it's our bread and butter of the business. But at the same time, it doesn't make sense that we have to talk about it every week because this should be a no-brainer. Like if you're gonna start a business, you have to invest in your business. Like it makes no sense that there's not a single business in the world that people cannot invest, that don't invest in. Like that just doesn't happen. So like when people complain about buying leads, it honestly just doesn't make any sense to me. So to answer your question, no, I understood that if you're going to start a business, you do have to put money into it. And whether that be buying leads, buying a plane ticket, buying some different systems to help you out, whatever the case may be, you have to invest in your business. Like this is back to some people still have that 9 to 5 mindset. Well, now you're starting a business, you're running your own. You got to just get over that hump. And honestly, dude, I'm gonna give you some kind of perspective. This kind of hit me here, but I'm sure at some point everyone here has watched Shark Tank. I used to be a big Shark Tank guy back in the day. But if you have not watched Shark Tank, just starting this business, watch it again so you know what I'm talking about. So every Shark Tank, I mean, every sort of business, right? So retail, restaurant, tech, whatever, everything goes on Shark Tank. And during every single pitch, they always talk about their numbers. And 80% of them say something very similar, like, oh, I started, 50,000 out of my 401k. I had to borrow 30,000 from my friends and family. I'm in $200,000 of debt. Our goal is to be profitable year 3. Like literally 80% of the people that go on that show say something very similar. Now imagine if you went on the show. Oh, I put in $1,000. I'm profitable in 4 days. Like you guys don't understand like what our business structure goes through compared to what every other business does. So like for you to or for people to come in here and say, I don't want to invest in leads. I don't want to buy a plane ticket. Like it honestly just doesn't make any sense. Like if you are going to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to invest in your business. So sorry if I got a little aggressive there, but that's how my honest take is on that topic.
No, that was gangster. And I actually never even thought about that, right? Like there has never been a single business that I know of where someone was like, I invested $1,000 4 days ago and now I'm set, my profit margins are this.
Literally.
Like it is kind of crazy. It's almost like you lose perspective when you're like it's almost what we do is like it's too like where else can you start a business for $1,000 or less?
You can't, I promise you. I've read so many business books in my life and I've talked to so many people that like this is like so simple of how to get started. Like that's why it kind of blows my mind when people complain about it.
So Andy, you had some experience in network marketing, is that correct?
Oh, back in the day, back in like senior year of high school.
Okay. And but I remember you're pretty good at it from what you've told me.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. What were some of the do you think like you learned a lot of lessons doing that helped you here? Do you think there's a lot of things that were like easier or harder about that business? Because I think that is like, sometimes people are like, oh, that this is an MLM or this is whatever, like growing an agency. Like, what are some of the things that you learned in that experience?
Yeah, so that was like my first introduction of like what it took to run a successful business and the sacrifices that you have to make. So that like that's when I was like I remember I used to think like I used to read a bunch of business books and I'd always like study successful people and literally all of the most richest people in the world all own their own business, right? So I used to think like why doesn't everyone want to start their own business? It wouldn't make sense to me not to. And then you kind of get in business and you realize, well, shit, this is kind of hard. Like I understand why not, it's not for everyone, right? But when you first started out doing that, like you understand the sacrifices that have to be made. You understand what it takes to actually get there. So yeah, I mean that was a good introduction, but that was also back when I was like 18. So I mean, like, what do you know much at 18? But then that was a good introduction to kind of get me got the ball rolling of like the mindset of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's huge. And at that point, remember you said you could sell you anything. So I can't imagine when you're 18.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a funny story too. That this dude didn't said like three sentences to me and I was already in.
Perfect. I love that. Okay. So speaking of, do you use a dialer or no?
No, so I actually just signed up for Ringy today, but up until this point, I was hand dialing the whole time.
Okay, hand dialing, but you don't even use like another person dialer to book your appointments. Why don't you? Because I think a lot of first of all, a lot of top producers do, but then also misconception is like, hey, the reason Andy does 40K in 4 weeks is because he has a dialer that books his appointments for him. One, how come you don't do that?
I mean, at the end of the day, like you're always going to be better than your dialers. I mean, so that's one, and two, I have the time to do it. I'm sitting here all day. I might as well be booking my own appointments, but I think eventually, like I'll probably get to that point. But right now, like I always have a full night of booked appointments. So now that I'm doing mortgage protection, like most of the time, you do have to book them at night because most of those clients are working. But like every single night, like I'm booked from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock of appointments. So like it's not like I'm short of appointments or anything like that. So there's never made any sense to me to have a dialer. But maybe on later on down the road I might have to. But no, right now it's been working for me.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And also, like, the point I'm trying to make with that too is like, you can't skip over the grind, right? Like, that's a mistake that I made in the business too, is because I was very, very uncomfortable dialing. So, Andy, as soon as I was like, okay, I'm just literally going to make enough money that as soon as I get enough money, I'm going to pay a dialer. As soon as I'm going to get enough money, I'm just going to be able to pay a dialer. But the reality is like, that didn't work, right? Because it was like, one, you're never going to be as good. Outsourcing is only good if it makes sense, if you can be more profitable by outsourcing. Otherwise, you're like, hey, what else am I spending my time on? Right. And you just can't bypass the grind. Right. Like there's a lot of people, guys, that have tried to come in this business and they fail because they're like, I want to see how quick I can get to the point that I can get a dialer. I want to see how quick I can get to the point where, I don't have to spend that much on leads, or I want to get to the point where I don't have to do this. It's like all of those things, guys, as you continue to become a top producer, a top agency owner, like that's literally all part of the game, is doing it yourself, doing your own dials, continuing to like you can't outwork that. Like that is the work. That's what we do here every single day. So I always love to see top producers, Andy, like yourself, that are like, no, I sit here and I dial my own leads. Like I don't have to outsource those things because one, I'm the best at it. And two, I'm sitting here. So why not do it? Right. Like guys, that should not be your goal to say, hey, how quickly can I get done with this work? How quickly can I get out of this work? How quickly can I get somebody else to do this work for me? That's part of the journey of like getting better. And I can imagine, Andy, because you've made so many dials and so many presentations and got rejected a lot of times, that's how you got better.
Right. I mean, just like anything, anytime you start something new, like it's natural, you're gonna suck at it. Like you just have to accept that fact. Like your first day, you're not gonna be good. Like just like 2 weeks ago when I started mortgage protection, I told Riyadh, I was like, dude, it feels like I'm like day one again because like I'm so used to knowing exactly what to say, all the rebuttals, all from start to finish. And then you go to mortgage protection, it's like all brand new to me. I'm like, oh, dude, I was like fumbling. I was saying this, I was messing up. It's like it's the same thing. Like you understand, like when you start something new, you're gonna suck at it, right? So, like for example, if I picked up a tennis racket tomorrow, like I'm gonna suck my first day, right? Now, if I go play tennis every day for 30 minutes a day, 3 months from now, I'm probably still not going to be very good. But if you go play every day for 8 hours a day, you're going to flatten that learning curve a lot, and you're probably going to be pretty damn good. So same thing with Dallas. If you come out here and you're making $50 a day, it's going to take you a long ass time to kind of get to where you need to be. But if you're actually grinding, putting in the work, $300-400 a day, you're going to flatten that learning curve, and it's I mean, you got to put in the work.
Yeah, you can't skip that part. I love that. All right, last thing, Andy, and then I'll let you get off here, or maybe two more things, but second to last thing. Brand new agent advice, or how about it doesn't even have to be brand new agents right now that are not meeting their goals, right? Like what's one thing, and you've given us a lot of advice, but if you're like, hey, this is the number one thing that like you guys cannot live without, that you guys have to start doing, what is that thing?
I mean, it's so simple. The answer to that is so simple. Like dial the phone. Like our business structure is so simple. Like if you want to be successful, you got to dial the phone. Like if if any person on here in the top leaderboard, I guarantee you they're probably the most productive or they dial the most more than anyone else. I mean, the answer is simple and you've heard it 1,000 times, but like that's the true answer. You just got to pick up the phone and dial. So another thing is like I think a big thing is having the right mindset or attitude. So kind of like this kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like your problems are not unique to yours, right? Everyone has the same exact problem. So what happens when you have a no show? What kind of mindset are you going to have? I mean, it's literally impossible to be depressed and grateful at the same time. So like just realize like your problems are not that big. I honestly remember I was having this conversation with my mom the other day. She's kind of like a nervous Nelly and she always gets stressed out about like little things like finances and this and that, and I'm like, mom, dude, like your problems are not that big. She's like, oh, Andy, you don't know, like you don't have the finances problems that I do. And it's like, mom, I have been to like the poorest places in the entire world. Like I've sat down with people who drink brown water for dinner, like, and they're some of the happiest people in the world. So like your attitude does not have anything to do with your success, your money. Like it's just your mindset going into things. So I think that's a big thing. Your brain is a muscle. You got to use it, exercise it, work it out every day. But that'd be my number one goal is dial the phone, get a good mindset to have.
That's actually huge. And I love that analogy and I love that example, right? Like when like your problems are not that big, you got hung up on. Like your problems are not that big. You got hung up on at the bank account, like big deal.
All right.
Like
Yeah,
there's
the problems are not that big. Like you drove 30 minutes, cool. Like go pick up the phone and start dialing again. Not that big of a deal.
yeah, I can see that you operate like that because you don't really get rattled very often,
No,
right? Like
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like even my freaking flight got canceled and I missed the sales conference. I mean, that's pretty frustrating, but like it was out of my control. Like, why would I get upset over something that you can't control? Like, why would you let something like that take away from you? It doesn't make any sense. So I think that's just, I mean, obviously it's easier said than done, but if you can just work on that, like understand like your problems are not that big. There's a lot of bigger problems out there. We're blessed to be in this business. Like you have a good opportunity here to do a lot of good things.
that's huge. I'm not going to say anything else because I do not want to take away from that at all. I think it's powerful. I think you've crushed it. Anything I'm leaving out, or does that pretty much do the trick?
I'm sure I'll probably get off this and probably think of like 10 other things to say. But I will say something about convention. Actually, I know it's a couple months away, but if any of you haven't gone to convention or maybe you went last year, didn't get a lot out of it, which would be weird. But when you go to convention, any in-person event, like you're gonna get fired up. Like it's gonna be like one of the best events you ever go to. Like you're gonna want to run through a brick wall, punch someone in the face. Like you're gonna be motivated as hell. But what's going to happen is, that motivation is temporary. So your alarm goes off 2 days later at 6 o'clock. You're not going to be motivated anymore. So when you go to a convention, like make it a priority to actually take tangible things out of what people say and implement them in your business. So if all you leave out of there is motivated, that's not what you want to do. You want to take actual tangible things that someone else is doing that you're not, that you can implement in your business that will make a change.
And is there any way in the world you would miss annual convention?
No, that's silly.
Like if you were a new agent, they were like, dude, I'm gonna have to save up, I'm gonna have to write policies, I might have to borrow money. like no matter what it took.
You need to open a credit card, like do what you got to do. Like honestly, it's like what, a $500 plane ticket, whatever you got to do. Like there's yeah, that'd be silly.
It's that big an event, you guys, and I'm very excited. So, Andy, you're a beast. I'm assuming you're going to be on live dials like you always are tomorrow, closing sales.
Yeah, I actually have 3 appointments I'm supposed to run here in the next 45 minutes. So
Okay, so he's like, I got to get the hell out of here, guys. I got to go close some sales. So that being said, guys, on the West Coast, there's still tons of time to dial. Andy, thank you so much. You absolutely crushed it. You're actually a much better trainer than I even expected you to be because you're just like a beast. You just run with it. So I'm excited. So guys, get back on live dials, listen to Andy close, take notes, implement it, be where your feet are at. If you're going to be plugged in, plug all the way in. And guys, there's no reason that none of that stuff Andy said is special. Like you can all get up tomorrow and do that exact same thing that he talked about. He gave you the lead vendor. He gave you how much he spends. He gave you what he says. He gave you his mindset. He's literally on live dials going to do it right in front of you. So anything that you guys want in the business, you can literally have it. So AT, I'm proud of you. I'm excited for you. And let's get back on the phones, guys.
thanks, Marissa. Take care.